Hi, I'm Lea Louise from Inspired Quilting by Lea Louise. Welcome to my sewing room. I have a beautiful baby fat quarter quilt for you to enjoy today. There's a free pattern for the link down below, so you can have your own made this weekend. This one is made out of batiks, but any fat quarters will do, and I think you're going to love how easy this goes together. So watch along and let me know what you think. I want to see pictures of your quilt on Instagram. Here are some fat quarters that are going to become my next quilt. It's going to be a very, very pink quilt. It's quite late. It's well after midnight. I'm in my pajamas and robes, so excuse my flappy sleeves, but this was just a quilt that called out and said, I need to be made right now. So here I am. I'll have this ready for you by, well, end of day since it's morning now. Here's what I have. This is going to be a fat quarter quilt using the all blocked in pattern. That's a pattern I designed, and it's a free download. So down below in the description, you can get the link to get that free pattern. I'm making the baby size quilt, which is a 6-block pattern. So in order to make this, we need 6 fat quarters, and I'm going to show you how all this works. But you'll notice I have 8 fat quarters here, so I have to narrow it down to 6. And I like the pink and the browns. I like this sort of a darkish brown, pink, purpley color in the background. I love the graphics. This doesn't have graphics. The color works really well, but I want to go with graphics. Part of the reason is this particular quilt has both small and large blocks within the block itself, which measures about 14 inches. So I want each fabric to kind of stand on its own and not be blenders. So I need to take one more out, and these 4 are part of a fabric line. And they go really well together, and I really particularly like these brighter pinks. I want some pink to stand out. I have these 2 browns, part of that line, but I really like this brown. Check out, there was a corner in here that was really, really enticing to me. And where is that? Check this out. I love the dark swirls on that burgundy pinkish background, and we have some darker areas over here, so that's going to work with the brown really well. So that's one that I definitely want to keep. Now the other one in question, well, it's probably between these 2. If I have a brown, actually 2 browns, I don't necessarily need another one because I'm going for pink. These are small graphics, and I like the larger ones because a larger piece with these small graphics might be too repetitive. Even though they have a pattern to them, I'm less inclined to choose that. And besides, this one has some really cool color changes in there. We've got the burgundies, we've got these dark purpley brown colors. The pink actually goes into a bit of coral, there's a bit of purple, so this can add a lot of interest to this quilt, yet it still really works with the colors, so we'll put that one aside. So here are my 6 pieces. And the best thing about this particular pattern, this quilt block, is that each fabric is going to have an opportunity to stand out without the fussy cutting. The fussy cutting is already calculated into the pattern, so that makes it really fun. Now, with a patchwork block, you can easily go from traditional to modern by simple fabric choices. In this case, this isn't particularly one or the other. Because of all the graphics and because of the contrast, it might be considered more modern, but you can easily make it a traditional quilt. We need to have accent strips on these blocks. So within the blocks, there's a couple places where we're going to have narrow accent strips, and that's going to tie everything together. So if you use something like this, I like my accent strip to be kind of bold and stand out and really bring some color and interest. And I think narrow strips of this along these fat quarters would work really well. But I'm going to go with a more modern feel, so I'm going to go with black and white accents. I didn't have a single fat quarter of the same print, but these are similar enough that I can mix them into this quilt very well, and it's going to work with a wonderful variation across the blocks, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun with it. I don't have a lot of each one, but I have a fat quarter here, and that's going to be more than enough for what I need. So let's get started cutting the block, and I'm going to get these laid out. So I'm going to set that one aside for another day. These are the 6 that we're going with, so let's go ahead and get set up for cutting. As you can see, all the fat quarters are layered on top of each other, so that's 6 pieces. And this is the corner that I'm measuring and cutting from. So the bottom is nice and straight. This is mostly straight. It is a little bit off, so I'm going to trim that side up. I always want to work from straight pieces, straight sides. So as I'm cutting my blocks, which are squares and rectangles, they're going to work well together. So let me cut the little bit off, barely an 1/8 or a 1/16 of an inch off some of them. Now we're going to start with a block that's going to measure 14.5 by 17 inches. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut this at 14.5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.5. Now all this fabric over here is going to be extra. So this is a great way to use fat quarters. You can get a large piece that you can use for blocks, but yet you still have a large enough piece on the side that can be used in your stash with other pieces if you're going to do different block quilts. I think I missed a spot right there. I was talking and, nope, that's fine. We're good. So we take off this piece. So now this is 14.5. And I need to measure it by 17. So this is at 1, I'll cut it at 18, and we will be good to get started. Right here and right here. So I'm going to cut across here. And by the way, the thing that I didn't mention, ooh, someone needs a new blade. Sorry, it's late. I wasn't paying attention. These pieces that I cut off first, these are all the salvages. So this is the raw edge, so now we have all raw edges. It's the salvages that I cut off. And I like doing that on my scrap pieces that I set aside simply because I know which way the grain is going. I get less raveled ends. So now that we have this, I am going to turn my block sideways, simply because for measuring purposes, that just works really well for me. And I'm going to line it up here. I've got a good crease there. I just need to be careful of while I'm cutting. So this is little bits everywhere. This is 17 by 14.5. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut off 2.5 inches from the top. So I am going to line this up on the grid because I am really relying on the grid to cut this. So I've got my 2.5 inches. Again, this is 17 inches right here. I'm going to cut off 2.5 inches. So let me get that lined up. There's my 17 by 2.5. I'm going to cut off a 2.5 inch corner. Actually, I'll cut it from this side. I'm going to cut off a 2.5 inch corner. So now this finished piece that I've just cut is going to measure 14.5. And then we have this great 2.5 inch piece that we can use for another project. Okay, from here, we are going to cut along the side. And we want to cut off a piece that is 5 inches. Now this currently measures 12 inches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And I'm going to cut a 5 by 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let me get this all lined up. There's our 5 by 12. But I actually want it to measure 11.5. So from here, I'm going to cut off 1/2 inch. I love this nifty little ruler. It's just so quick and easy to work with. This is probably not salvageable. That's too small a piece, so that'll disappear. So I'm just going to slide this up here so we can see what's going on. So I have my my 5 by 11.5. Now I'm going to cut off a 2-inch piece across the top. And that's going to leave me with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 inches. So this is going to be a 2-inch strip that we won't be using in this quilt. But again, we're kind of creating a wonderful supply of stash pieces to work with. So now I have a 10-inch by 12. And I'm going to cut this by 7. So I'm going to have a 5-inch strip and a 7. So this will end up being 7 by 12. Okay. And I know it sounds like a lot of numbers, a lot of unusual sizes, but it really goes together so quickly, and I love how it works. So there's piece number 2. Well, I don't know what number. We're kind of past that, aren't we? So here we have our 5 by 10, and we want this to be 5 by 5. And so I'm going to cut this right across here. And these are the pieces we use for our block. But there's one more thing we need to do, and this is where it gets tricky. Clockwise, we're going to take this one here. Oh, see how that lines up? And we're going to put this one here. Oh, it's looking interesting. And there we go. There we have our block. So in order to mix them up, we want to change the order. So starting from here, that's going to be on top. We're going to take one piece, the top piece, and put it on the bottom. Okay, so now we have this one. Now we're going to take 2 pieces and put them on the bottom. Then we're going to take 3 pieces. Put those on the bottom. And now we'll take 4, 2, 3, 4, right? 2, 3, 4, there we go. Okay, so now we have, this is what a block will look like. Each block will have a different pattern throughout. So as I'm piecing my blocks, I'm going to put them together one at a time rather than mix it up. But the first thing I also need to do here is add the accent strips. So I'm just going to slide this over to the side like this, because the accent strips are going to go here and here. So let me get those strips and I'll show you how to cut them. Now we're ready to cut the accent strips from these white fabrics. And I have 3 of them layered together with the salvages on this side and the raw edges along the side where I'm going to cut. Now I need some 1-inch strips that will go here and 1.5 inch here. These are 5 inches, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut those from up here. This piece is going to measure 14.5. So from my starting point at 0, I'm going to go to 14.5. And I'm just going to set that up there for the moment. And I need a total of 6 pieces that are 1.5 inches. Now, since I have them stacked in 3s, I just need to cut 2 sets. So we'll line this up at 1.5. There's the first cut, and here is the next, the second cut. So I'm just going to put, just going to put these on top of each other like this. They're going to tuck right in there. Ooh, I like how that's looking. This is extra. I'll set that aside for the next quilt. And then this, I need 6 pieces that measure 1 by 5. So here, what do we have? Let's line this up on a 5. It makes the counting easier. Make sure they're nice and even. So we have 5 inches right here. And now each of these will be cut into 1-inch strips. And just enough to add a bit of accent, but a whole lot of interest. So there's our first strip. And second one. Sorry, my blade is really dull. I must have snapped it on something because it was fine earlier today. And that one we'll just throw away. So these, oh, I cut too many, didn't I? That's okay. There's never a piece that can't be used, and that's going to go right in here. So see how this becomes a really fun asymmetrical block. It has some great colors, great blocks in here, and those accent pieces are going to make it stand out. Each block is going to have the same layout, but then as we put it together, we're going to turn the blocks so these accent pieces can go in different directions, or you can keep them all the same. There's such a variety of ways you can lay this quilt out. So I'm going to start sewing and show you how this goes together. So the first step is to add the accent strips. I sew one along here and one in between the 2 5-inch. And I press them away from the accent so they go towards the printed fat quarters. And the other thing to keep in mind as you're sewing, when you have narrow strips, you want to sew with them on the top and not the bottom. When your feed dogs are pulling fabric through, if you have a narrow strip, it can easily be pulled through a little more quickly because the bottom feed dogs tend to grab more than your presser foot on top, and you can end up with a bit of a wavy, waffly ruffle there, and that's not going to work so well. So the next step then is to put this together here, and then we're going to add that to the bottom. So let me take care of that, and I'll show you the next step. These pieces are now all attached, and it's pressed to the larger block, the larger square, in order to eliminate any bulk of seam allowance. Next, we're going to add this strip, and our block is finished. The beauty of this, when you see how this is laid out, when this block, let's say we have another block right here, goes here, there's no seams to line up. That's what makes this such a fast and easy quilt, is it goes together quickly. There's no seams to fuss with, just your corners. And if all you have are 6 blocks, there's only 4 points where they line up. So that's really a quick put together. So let me go ahead and put this last strip on, and I'll show you our finished block. And here's the finished block, all pressed and ready to go, along with the other 5. And you can see how each one, while they have the same pattern, look a little bit different with the fabric layouts in different areas. So now the next step is to put this all together, and we have 6 blocks, so it'll be 2 across the top with 3 along each side. So it's 2 by 3 blocks. I'm going to piece that together, and we will have a finished quilt. All 6 blocks are laid out. And the key thing you want to keep in mind as you're laying these out is you don't have large pieces of the same fabrics adjacent to each other. Now these, you can see, so we have 2 here, these 2, these 4 corners will come together. Now these will meet corner to corner, but they're not really touching, so that's okay. I'm not worried about that. This little piece here, we're only going to have an overlap by that much. I'm not worried. Same here, these go in a different direction. But it's the larger pieces that we don't really want too close together. So everything seems to be spread out nicely. I'm going to go ahead and piece all these up, and I'll show you what our finished quilt looks like. And here's our finished quilt with all 6 blocks assembled together. It finishes at 28 by 42, I think it is. Yeah, 28 by 42. So it's a good size quilt by itself for a baby quilt. But what I like to do with this pattern in particular is put a single border along one side. Now, ordinarily what I'll do is use this contrast band here and then use a color along the side for a, you know, kind of an offset as the border. But I have a fabric that I want to use, so let me grab that real quick. Here's a fabric I've used for other baby quilts, and I really love it. Little woolly sheep. And so what I do on a quilt like this is I will cut this to about a 6-inch width and run it down one side on the long side. But I like to have a strip in here kind of to follow along with this. Ordinarily, what I do is I'll use my accent strip first, and then this will be one of these or something comparable. But I'm going to do a different take because that's black and white. Let me go back to some of these fabrics that I put aside. And let's see. I don't really want to go brown. This is kind of, you know, this doesn't come out really good in the camera. This is really like a fuchsia. It looks really red in the camera. The other option is to use this, but I think that's still, it's just not quite enough. I'm going to go with this, and hopefully when I take a picture of this quilt outside tomorrow, and excuse me, today, early this morning, I will get a good color match on this so you can see how well it works. So now I'm going to cut a 1.5-inch strip here that'll go the length of this quilt, and then a 6-inch piece here, and there's my border, and this will be finished. So let me go ahead and get that done, and I'll show you how this looks. Now with the border on, our quilt is finished. I just need to trim up some edges and square it up, get my batting in there, and decide on a backing. There, I like the little swirl in the middle. Let's kind of do that, and you can kind of see where we're coming from. So there it is. That piece, that contrast right there works out really, really well. I like that against the white woolly sheep. This works well. It kind of ties in nicely with that border. There we go. This took me less than 3 hours, I believe. And that's doing the cutting and the sewing and the pressing and the recording and all those things. And there's no reason why you can't have one done this weekend. So I hope you give this a try. Be sure and download the free pattern. It's a lot of fun. It's a great quilt, and the pattern has a number of different layouts, even one that's on point, so it's diagonal. So make sure you look at those because there's a lot of fun ways to use this pattern. It's been great. Thank you for staying up so late with me tonight. And I'm going to go get some sleep, and I'll get some pictures of this first thing in the morning. Here's the finished quilt, and it looks wonderful. The colors work great together, and the accent strips just create so much interest. There's a lot of graphics that just work wonderfully and draw your eyes in, and you want to take a look at each and every piece. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you are inspired to make your own version of this pattern. Remember, it's a free download. The link is right below. So get a quilt done this weekend, and I want to see some pictures on Instagram. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy the weekend.